Welcome to God with George Ortega. This is episode number 71. I'm recording it on Sunday, January 31st at 11:46 p.m. a.m. Eastern Time. And I want to talk about how we communicate with God, or perhaps more so how God communicates with us. Um, we're, we're, we're exploring this from the framework that God is really the only being, God is omnipotent, that our experience of reality is really God manifesting God's consciousness through us. So essentially, anything we think, feel, say, and do is really coming to us from God. Relative to that, so that the question then becomes, you would think that, well, if all our thoughts are coming to us from God, are being compelled by God, then you would think that all our thoughts would be, let's say trustworthy, would be that, a thought comes into our mind and we should go with it. For example, yesterday was a Sabbath. I was meditating, and this thought came to me, and it was pretty powerful. A lot of times when you're meditating, thoughts come, they disrupt the meditation, but many of these thoughts provide great insight into your life, reality. So this thought was that I should change the furniture in my living room around. That I should, move this futon, couch that I have, and this table. And when I got the thought, it seemed good. It seemed, right. And I didn't go with it then because it was the Sabbath. To me, that seemed like work. Um, and then, like today, I was thinking about it, and the thoughts that came to me today were, no, that would not be um, a better idea than the setup I have now. Like the furniture in this room, I like, and so the idea is that, and I think what I'm getting at is not just in terms of what we should do or shouldn't do based on the thoughts that we have to question them, but this really, to a great extent, relates to the matter of virtue. In religion, there's a concept known as discernment, and that's about discerning between right and wrong. We have two courses of action: do this, don't do this or do that. And and many of the problems of the world, the problems of our personal lives, to a great extent, are about this. In other words, like, to the extent that we get the answer right, our lives tend to go better. And so pulling it back to how we started today, it's kind of curious that God, as all-knowing, would would have us think thoughts that are, let's say, incorrect or harmful or even evil. That's something that there may be an answer to. Um, but if there is, I haven't arrived at it yet. But notwithstanding, why it's that way, it seems that is how things are. And that that really, a lot of times in our world, we have environmental concerns, we have geopolitical concerns, economic concerns, and they generally, you know, take the form of actions, political actions that we use to address them. But very often our politicians, we who elect our politicians, um, get things wrong. We don't prioritize what's most important. We, um, we allow greed and selfishness and self-interest, um, to corrupt us, to corrupt our world. And, and so I think what I'm trying to say is that the foundational challenge of humankind, yes, we have many, again, actions we need to take to save, our future climate, to address various, serious problems. But underneath that, foundational to that, we as a species need to get much better at discernment, at discerning right from wrong. Perfect example, because because God does punish. There are beliefs. Some people believe that God does not punish. That's that belief is really contrary to the basic theme of the Bible. Adam and Eve were expelled from the Garden of Eden because they disobeyed God's commandment. God punished them. Um, this idea that God does not judge us and reward us when we do good and punish us when we do harm is harmful. It's dangerous. It's mistaken. It's not understanding God's sovereignty, God's omnipotence. It's not understanding that our God, who created the world by virtue of having created it, governs it completely. If you really take the time to think about that, you'll see the logic in it. And so, because we live in a world where our actions have consequences, if we treat ourselves right, we thrive. If we treat others rightly, others treat us rightly. We thrive. We live in a world where every day there are examples of our doing things wrong, neglecting to do things, and then being punished. For example, and this is something I learned a long time ago when I was practicing Orthodox Judaism in the 80s. Let's say you reach into your pocket and want to get a dime, but you get a nickel or a quarter. That's punishment. They're like rewards. And if you reach into that pocket for a dime and you get the dime, that's a reward. This is how our lives work. If, let's say, this is something I'm guilty of a lot. Let's say you have some dishes you haven't done in a few hours or a day, whatever, and you should have done them. And so what's the punishment? The punishment, you go into the kitchen and you see them all there. The punishment is like you want to cook something and you need some counter space, but there are dishes on the counter. So, and that's just one example of a multitude of many ways that God does punish us. It's kind of like parents. Parents punish their children all of the time, and it's a reflection of love. It shouldn't be seen that, oh, God is punishing us, so God is evil in that way. No, God punishes us for our benefit, for our good. It's an act of love. And again, it's, to the extent that we don't understand that we believe that God is, you know, that, well, see, I don't understand that theology of God doesn't punish us. I mean, perhaps people who believe that have this idea that we are being punished by Satan. That's the only kind of alternative that I can think of. And it could be right in a sense. In other words, like God, and we're talking metaphorically here, theologically, God created angels. And There are some good angels that benefit us, that give us things, that bless us, and there are some bad angels that punish us, that deceive us. And you could look at it that way, but again, just as we human beings always manifest the will of God, this idea that we have a free will, that our top scientific minds, Newton, Darwin, Freud, Einstein, all rejected as false, that the Essenes, this Jewish sect that existed alongside the Sadducees and Pharisees at the time of the first millennium, they rejected the idea. Um, this idea of free will, it's not in the Bible. There's nowhere in the Bible that says, yes, you have the power to freely will, free of God's influence, free of God's compulsion, free of your conditioning, free of your genetics, think and feel and say and do as you wish. Um, we need to we need to understand that, like, in relation to that, in relation to these angels, so yes, they are rewarding or punishing us according to what we do, according to what God deems right or wrong. But it's not really them. I mean, again, they don't have a free will either. If God created the world that contains angels, God governs. God is manifesting God's will through those angels. This is the way our reality is. And I mean, I could get into, I think I will more so on future episodes, um, focus on this matter of God's will, that God's will is the only will, that God is the only being, because these are very novel thoughts to many people, because they're not part of the traditional, well, no, they are part of the traditional theology, but they're not acknowledged or appreciated or even understood. So we will delve into that, God willing, in more detail. But let's pull back to this original idea of discernment. Um, we want to get stronger. Um, Physically, we go to a gym and we work out. We lift weights. We walk, jog. You know, do various exercises to increase our muscle strength. Um, we want to become more virtuous. It's the same thing. For example, with this question of whether and this isn't really a virtue question, I guess, like, because, or maybe it is, and I'm not realizing, should I move the furniture in my living room? Um, let's say it was a question of virtue. Well, actually, it was. It was like the question was in the Sabbath. First the question is like, should I move the furniture and should I do it on the Sabbath? So, um, no, I got to come up with a better one, something, because that's two factors. Should I? All right. A lot of times I like to eat at night, and sometimes I realize that it's not ideal for my sleep. Sometimes it's not, we've all experienced this. It's not real true hunger. It's like, this false kind of an appetite that's emotional. We get this. So like, so the thought comes to my mind late at night. Um, it'd be great to have, something substantial to eat. And sometimes it's the right thing. Sometimes actually you eat, a lot and you sleep well, and it is the right thing. Sometimes it's not, and that's where the question comes in. So like, a lot of times, in terms of strengthening our ability to distinguish right from wrong, to know, what God wants for us, um, rather than what God is, for whatever reason, causing us to think is in our best interest. To the let's if I'm dealing with that question, all right, should I or should I not eat? At the moment that the question comes up, a lot of times when we try to answer those questions, we we don't give it all that much thought. We might give it a few seconds or half a minute, or the thought comes up and we'll, let's say we're watching television or reading a book or listening to something, we'll go back to it and the thought will emerge again, the possibility, and we'll go back to whatever. And a lot of times we don't give the matter the 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 consideration it requires. And this is a matter of time. So so when we're determining, we're trying to determine right from wrong, it's important that we understand that these are times where we're called upon, our work at that time is to stop other work if possible, especially when possible, and devote our mind to that question, whether it takes 5 minutes or 10 minutes. That's actually another test, in terms of right or wrong. Are we going to do what we need to do to better understand the rightness and wrongness of what we're considering? So this matter of discernment, again, is foundational to not just our personal lives, but to the lives of the planet. And it would be great to see religions um, delve into that a lot more, to teach people. So, for example, what are the criteria by which we determine whether something is right or wrong, whether something, promises reward or punishment? Um, the first criteria is like, well, will it create happiness? Will it create greater happiness? Because we are hedonic creatures. God made us this way. We seek pleasure, we avoid pain. That's our basic motivation. That's the foundational criteria to everything we do. But that's not the only criteria. Then so we have this so let's say I to eat something, late at night would feel good, okay? But then the question is, fine, would it feels good, but would it be right? Would it be, in my best interest? Um, so there's the the criteria are the hedonic criteria and the moral criteria. Moral criteria, you know, a lot of times they'll be they will match up. A lot of times, what we want to do, we'll consider it and find no moral objection. A lot of times, though, we will have a question: is this the right thing to do? And and that's the point that again that just as we go to the gym to build up our strength, our physical strength, to the extent that we practice this discernment, we practice just staying with these questions longer than just a few seconds, and to not completely trust our instincts, or because our instincts sometimes are impulses that lead us astray. Um, so, all right, and I want to you've got about 8, 9 minutes. I want to return to this question that we asked earlier. You know, why does God um, either directly or conceivably it seemed I could accept that there are all these angels that theologically we might call them angels. In science we haven't really detected them, so we don't have a name for them, but these beings that feed us thoughts, perhaps, and we could see it that way. And or again, we could see it as just like these thoughts coming from us directly. But this idea, for example, thoughts come to us from people all the time, and they're God's thoughts, but God is using the people around us to communicate the thoughts to us. Um, and so, yes, so like when the thoughts are beneficial, when they lead to greater happiness, when they don't result in our doing something immoral, then everything's all right. But again, in our experience, we can't deny that we have thoughts, and pretty much all the time, that come into our mind that are not um, the right thing to do. As a matter of fact, again, one of my learnings when I was studying Orthodox Judaism in the 80s was that every moment of our lives it's a test. Excuse me, at every moment could be a test. Let's say our mind begins to think of whatever, you know, it may not be the right time to think of that, or we there may be other reasons we shouldn't be thinking about whatever we're thinking about. So, but at each moment there seems to be a different test. So again, the basic question is like, why would God do that? I mean, it's beyond my understanding. It's God's world. I mean, and the good thing about attributing everything to God instead of like attributing some things to myself and other people, I mean, fundamentally, is that like I could I could judge myself or someone else and say no, they're doing something wrong. People, for example, who eat animals, who are just like oblivious to the harm these animals go through. I could judge these people if they had a free will and say these people are exceedingly evil. They're hurting these animals. You know Animal farming is responsible for about 15% of greenhouse gases, so they're destroying the climate. But to take that inaccurate, erroneous view that they have a free will, so they're fundamentally to blame, um, leads to anger and leads to this judgment, leads to a mistaken judgment, that they are evil, that they're doing, So it's not like they're not doing evil, but but the more accurate understanding of the situation is like God is compelling them to do that. And so what's the benefit of that perspective? It's that it allows for not even forgiveness of the other, of ourselves, but it allows for the acknowledgement that we're all fundamentally innocent. It's complete absolution. And that also has the other side of it that reminds us that we shouldn't be prideful, arrogant. We shouldn't take credit for the good we do. We shouldn't, boast about these things because these things are not ours either. So again, the benefit though, like with the evil we do of not attributing it to ourselves and each other, is that if we try to attribute it to God, yes, logic tells us, well, he's responsible fundamentally because he created the world. That's the first order of logic. And maybe that's accurate. Maybe that's right. And maybe like the right understanding of God is God, and as God tells Isaiah in the book of Isaiah, I create light, I create darkness, I create good, I create evil. So God is actually acknowledging this. So maybe that's the way we should see God, or we could see something. We can judge each other. I can judge other people because I know there are people with limited powers. You know, I know enough about myself and people to be able to like relatively accurately judge people. And again, that's in terms of whether they're doing something wrong or not in terms of fundamental attributability. Because again, if they don't have a free will, they're not, fundamentally accountable. But with God, you can't, a being on this very small planet in this galaxy that's one of 2 or 3 trillion in our universe, to attempt to presume to be able to judge, the God who created this universe, the God who created this world. No, we have to acknowledge we have neither the intelligence nor the knowledge for that kind of judgment. And so by attributing everything to God and not to ourselves and the evil and the good, especially with the evil, we were left, I think, probably most wisely, most accurately, with a circumstance where, again, we lack both the intelligence and information to make a valid judgment of God, of whether what God is doing is right or wrong, um, and and that frees us from anger at God. We may, for example, like we have to repair the world. There are things about the world that we want to make better. We want to be happier. We want to be healthier. We want to be more virtuous. We want to, there's so many good things that we want. Yeah, there's an element of perhaps dissatisfaction in the way things are that they need to be fixed. But to the extent we can do this, one with the kind of acceptance that they teach in Buddhism, that yes, the world is not perfect, but that does not mean that we have to suffer that imperfection. We could be very content, blissful in the world as it is. But 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 we're better able to fix the world, to make the world better when we're detached from the emotions. All right, I've got about 2 minutes left. So again, the basic theme of this episode is that our conscience is like a muscle. The more we exercise it, the stronger it gets, the better able it is to discern between right and wrong. And that's a process that requires time. And sometimes it requires going, with a pad and paper, listing why it might be the right course, on one column, why it might be the wrong course on another column. That's also something that, so however, but the point is that we need to devote much more time in our personal lives and societally to addressing these questions, not relying on our instinct or impulses, but just like reasoning them out. All right, so thanks for watching. Let's see. You can catch the episodes every 5 o'clock, every Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. here on White Plains Community Media, channel 76 if you get Optimum, 45 if you get Verizon, and the episodes are also on the internet, on YouTube. And I may do another episode later today. I'm gonna, hopefully we can get Rabbi Andrew Friedman back for another session soon. Hopefully he and I will do 2 sessions a week, and we may actually revisit this, later today, which will air on Tuesday. But anyway, thanks for watching again. I hope you're having a good day, and God willing, I will see you on the next episode. Thanks again.